Hi friends! Today we're diving into another NATASHA DENONA tutorial inspired by the recent release of Mini Crush, which I have not purchased yet. I'm waiting on it, and before I decide to do so, I wanted to revisit the three color stories that I feel Mini Crush lives in: Love Palette, Mini Love, and of course the Coral Palette, which I'm not actually sure if it's still available, but this is primarily to inspire you to hop back in to the Love Palette. This released, I believe, 2 years ago. Mini Crush, I think, is based off this color story as the Mini Love one was, and upon seeing Mini Crush, lovely colors. You can't go wrong with mauves, plums, and that sparkly overlay pink. I think very beautiful. When it comes down to it, if I use that palette and then I use the ones that I have with similar shades, would you be able to decipher which one was which? I know I probably couldn't have, but that's not to say if you are waiting for something that is inspired by the Love Palette and you did not buy the 15 pan mini because it's not practical for you, you just needed the 5 mini shades to kind of fulfill your mauve pink desires, then yes, buying Mini Crush over the Love Palette is a practical choice if you don't have anything. But if you have the ones that I just showed you and you still want to get Mini Crush, fine. I know I wasn't in a particular rush, okay? And this is in the library of NATASHA DENONA tutorials that I will be continuing. This is a series where I'll be revisiting previous palettes from her brand, doing 6 look tutorials with them, helping you out in using the makeup that we have, okay? The Love Palette was an interesting release. I think it was, you either hated it or you loved it, no pun intended. I loved it when I used it. I love these colors, although I do recognize the inconsistencies with some of the mattes in here, that they were patchy and difficult to work with, but also overall inconsistencies with the palettes where I would swatch one in Sephora, the mattes were very soft, but the one I purchased from Beautylish at the time, the mattes were very hard pressed, and that can influence the blend and how the shadows apply on your lid. So I did return the one I purchased from Beautylish at the time, rebought it from Sephora, and I thought those mattes were better. So I believe inconsistencies in the production of the formula and people getting different types of mattes. I don't think overall this was a hit within the NATASHA DENONA brand, but I wanted to revisit it because it's not the most neutral friendly story, but I do think the colors are gorgeous, and we'll go over different ways that you can utilize it as like your daily friendly palette despite the purples and the pinks and such. And also we'll briefly touch on Coral and Mini Love, make some quick comparisons. Why don't I do that first? Timestamps will be down below, by the way. In comparison to the previously released Mini Love, Mini Crush here, which I will show from Le Bon Maquillage. If you don't know Bon, she does impeccable swatches, and I will make sure to list her IG down below. Taking a look at Bon's swatches and then at my Mini Love, I think I can detect the primary difference is that Mini Love leans significantly more cool, whereas Mini Crush with the mauve, I think warmer in undertone, and the matte shade, the deepest one here, is more plum leaning, whereas the one in Mini Love, I think more eggplant aubergine, so it has a cooler undertone here. The pink, what looks to be a scatter effect shade, looks absolutely gorgeous, but I think we might have something similar in the original Love palette. Not so much in the Mini Love. I think this has more of an opaque base. Also lovely though on its own, center of the lid, inner, lower lash line, wherever you want to place it. And the metallic shade in Mini Love, I think, is more pink leaning, whereas the metallic in Mini Crush may be more red leaning, and the metallic in Coral definitely more red overall. And a truer metallic, this is just incredible. Definitely more of like that traditional metallic formula that exists in NATASHA DENONA palettes. You can see the ones in Mini Love, they have more crumb to them. There's a lot more texture, and you definitely have to press the pigments in so they can adhere well to the lid. What I love in coral is abalone. This beautiful, I think, what serves to be like a scatter effect duochrome here, I think softer than what exists in Mini Love. It doesn't have a strong base, but quite beautiful to place on any of the other shades in here. Or if you wanted to dip out and add it on top of the shades in Love or Mini Love, that would be a great idea. And then you have the mattes that are red and peach. So those are more, I think, distinct. You get more into the purple plum mauves when venturing into Mini Love and the originally sized Love. So with those small comparisons out the way, yes, I can make an argument that Mini Crush is totally different, still need it. But at the same time, even if I find myself buying it in the future, I'm still not in a rush to get it. I don't feel the need to have those shades in my collection, given what I already own and the fact that I can create a similar vibe eye look wise without having to use Mini Crush. So with that the way, why don't you come in a little closer? That's enough. All my complexion and cheek products will be listed down below. For my eye primer, I am using the Viseart primer again. I am curious to use Natasha's primer, something with a little more opacity and coverage. If we take a moment to scan the Love palette, just as a reminder, Natasha Denona palettes are designed to be used as a matrix. No matter what column, row, quad, trio, duo you use, it is a look. You don't have to go nuts in mixing all the shades. If you wanted to remain monochromatic, you have the more purple leaning shades here, but as you move towards this end of the palette, you bump into the reds, the warmer pinks and plums. You have the lighter mattes here to use as brow bone highlight or maybe just a soft wash of color on the lids. But given that, even though these are a little more crumbly in regards to the metallics, they have really nice sparkles. So I would highly recommend you at least combine that with the lighter shade to create a little more dazzle on the lids to create dimension. If you want to take a look, if we take first, which is a warm beige shade, but on me it leans very pink. So if you are deeper than me, you could use this as a highlight. It turns out to be a little more pink on my brow bone, so I will probably use this as an inner corner just type of a shade. Or maybe there was something on my brush. You know what? There was something in this color. So Heart, I think, traveled onto first. Let me put first. There we go. Not completely like super light enough for me to rely on it for that lightening effect on my brow, but you could use it on the inner corner if you want to rely on a matte shade for highlight there. If we tapped into Valentine, let's see how that looks on the inner part of the lid here. Valentine is definitely more of a cooler pink pastel shade, which I think to get the most out of will be best patted down and not fluffed on, unless you want to use it for creating gradients, especially if combined with the more medium pinks here and plums. As a matter of fact, why don't we dip into Intense? I thought Intense was one of the better performing mattes in the Love palette. You see it has more of a, it's like a pink red hue to it, but definitely softer than the other mattes found in this palette, and I think really nice to apply. When using Intense, no, depending on your skin tone, it could look very warm on you, but if that's what you want, then you will get that from the shade. And as I was speaking about, you can use Valentine if you don't want that to be a prominent matte shade like I placed here on the inner part of my lid. You can use it then to brush against the edges of Intense to create a softer gradient of color, maybe to dial down the warmth of Intense a little bit too if you wanted to adjust the saturation a little bit. If we wanted to stay within this kind of realm of pink red, you can definitely go in with Heart. And just to show you, when using a red color, it definitely livens up the look. It creates vibrancy. I don't think For me, I don't consider red, warm pink to be everyday. I say that if you're one to usually gravitate towards the neutral browns and such. Once you introduce red, it brings the look way up, right? This is very potent in color. And to speak on the matte itself, I think quite nice. Definitely one of the better performing ones, but as I had mentioned before in my previous NATASHA DENONA tutorials, to get the most out of the mattes is to, I believe, pat down first and then fluff after to maximize the color richness to ensure that it does not apply patchy. But I think that's actually quite nice. Picking up a little more intense, brushing it over heart to create a smoother gradient there. I probably took a little too high. I did. Let's see what we can do with Valentine. Can I fluff that down? This is so Valentine's Day eye right now. I don't know how we got here, but I'm not mad at it. You could keep it like this. Well, hold on. Let's complete the look at least. If you want to keep it in the matte realm, I'm taking heart down from the top, cradling the outer fourth of my lower lash line to create that nice bracket. I'm also going in with intense for the majority of my lower lash line. I like to wear my lower lash line colors quite low to create that hazy effect. I would highly recommend, if you want it to look tighter, a little more cleaned up, you can use a smaller brush so the color that is can stay closer to your lash line. I think that's actually quite beautiful by itself if you want to just stick with the matte. But we have to take a look at some of these shimmers and metallics. Now, you can see these are more pink beige, and then you go into the more purpley. This is silver, so that's cooler in tone. I think giving might be something. Taking it with the finger, the warmth of your finger, I think will best distribute this. Excuse me, in this case, this is more of like a topper. It actually has a hot pink flip to it. I think adds nice color to the mattes that are already on the lid. So it's not going to have a strong base, which may be more appropriate for this situation where you have color already on the lid. So the red and more warm pink will show through from underneath giving, unless you go in with the Intensifies wand and want more of like an opaque presentation. But I like that. That's not too bad. Just to add more colors here, Lifetime is more of like a beige gold. Let's see, peachy. This is what we're getting from Lifetime. Shader brush, I think nice to place on the inner part of the lid. While I understand we already went in with Valentine, again, you can layer these over mattes. But because the mattes are drier, they're not going to have as much stick. So let's just say you can take your Intensifies wands. If not this, plop on more primer on the portion of your eye you want to just have more of that showing. Okay, let's go in with Lifetime again, and definitely adding the Intensifies does kick up the stick, okay? As well as with giving. I'm overlapping the two, as I think that creates a really nice wash from that beige pink into the more like neon going on pink. I'm taking more of my finger. I think that's the best thing to do. And when all has been applied, you can go in with your shader brush, very lightly flicking over the edges of where that shimmer ends so it could look smoother in application. There's not too much casualty going on the eye, but of course I would always recommend that you have your little powder brush on standby to whisk away any sparklies. I'm a liar, I did get a little fallout, but it's okay. If you want to avoid that, just do your eyes first. I ended up with some giving automatically here on the inner corner of my eye, but I will place a little more here on the inner lower lash line, whisking it over Intense and Heart, thing that makes it look more complete. And this is something I like to do, whether with Intense or Valentine, to add a little more of those shades right at the borders here, so it can kind of flow into whatever blush you have or more into the temple so it doesn't look so abrupt. I'm going totally 180 here, and I want to apply, I don't want to apply the shade. Dream. I want to apply Dream. Dream is the creamy matte formula, or cream to powder formula, excuse me, that's usually used to have shades like this that might be intimidating in powder form, but with the cream to powder, definitely lighter in application. So I want to then take this all over, because if you wanted to just use one shade, but you're like, I don't know what I can do with Dream. Dream is like not a lavender. How can we describe Dream? There's, I feel, a little more punch to it than a lavender. Lavender for me leans more pastel, like it has a little more white in there, a little more of a white base. Dream definitely has more warmth, and I adore this color. It's tough to build up. I'm definitely going in here a lot, okay, to get the color intensity that I'm looking for. I do think it's worth it, given the fact that that's the point of this formula. It gives you the control, okay, in terms of building the color, controlling the blend. And I think despite the type of color it is, it's quite easy to blend out, even if you have to go in a few times to achieve the level of intensity that I wish to with this shade. Plopping it on my lower lash line, and this is just to show you like the simplest approach you can take with any of these palettes. One color on the lid and you're done. But this, I think, very beautiful. The purple is soft enough that I feel not as jarring for a daily moment, rather than it being, I don't know, like a royal purple that's very, in terms of in your face with the color. This is just a little softer, but not so lavender soft that it looks too pastel. However, if you wanted to maybe go in with Pure Love, this is the more plum purple leaning shade, and tapped over Dream, I think so lovely, because Pure Love has these blue reflex. If I'm not mistaken, it is a duochrome. It's a soft one, but layered over this color cream to powder, I think so pretty, especially if you don't want it to look as flat. Even though the cream to powders, they don't look dry because it has that moussey texture that I feel skin-like in finish when blended. To add this over top, hold on, let me get my phone. I don't know if you can see that, but it's so shiny, especially when you give it time to settle onto the eye. It has beautiful shine. Transparent compared to Lifetime. So this is transparent. This is Lifetime. You see transparent is cooler in tone. We can use that as our inner corner highlight of choice if you wanted. I'm taking Blind, which is straight up well, I want to say it's straight up silver, but there's something in me that feels it's like a slightly leaning purple silver. I think silver for me is sterling, what exists in Pat McGrath's Decadence. That's like super bright silver. This, I think, a little more muted, which I love for inner corner. Come on. Yes. We could take Pure Love and brush it along the lower lash line here, right on Dream, just to give it a little more shine and dazzle. Now, again, by itself, phenomenal. Lashes, just mascara, however you want to cut it, okay? Commitment is the other cream to powder formula in here. I think appropriate to use with Dream as a wing liner moment. If you wanted to introduce more smoke, you could tap that color on the outer bracket of your lid, or both outer and inner to create that halo eye. I think I just want to go in a little bit here on the outer part of my lid. Or more specifically, my lash line. I'm not looking to create a full-blown smoky eye. It's more so to add a little bit of dimension here, introducing some intensity. But I love the fact that Commitment is like this beautiful, deep eggplant color that you can definitely adjust accordingly. Of course, I always Why does this always happen to me? I always take it out too far. Take it out too far, Alicia. Now, this is what I was proposing earlier. If you happen to have all 3 palettes, okay, you could go into Abalone with your finger and just lightly tap that on the center of everything. And I think that brightens it up. It's kind of like if you had an actual shade from Pat's palettes and you needed to just shift the color a little bit. You know, if you wanted to introduce a little more of that purpley flippity flip. Okay. All right, we got super red pink and we got purpley silver. Let me slap on some lashes and I'll be right back. Demo 1 is done, primarily showcasing the warmer pink red as well as the cooler violet. That's the color I was trying to pin down when describing Dream, more violet versus lavender. Using Blind, Pure Love, Commitment, and again, when all is said and done, you slap on the lashes, you complete the looks. I love this. I would totally wear this out during the day. I know that's just me and everyone's level of day friendly is vastly different, but I can get down with these shades, especially when you commit to the red pinks and have it be like a true Valentine's Day eye. But I adore the purples as well, and I'm happy we separated them at least for this first demo so we could get a feel of what these colors can deliver when combined, but somewhere down the middle, so perhaps it could appear a little more like low-key, maybe. We don't know until we try. So let me take these lashes off, start from scratch, and I'll be right back. To kick off the second demo with the more low-key